We have three major stories to bring you today. Now, the biggest story is going to actually be about updated sales data coming from Circana for the month of August for Nintendo Switch 2 and, yes, other platforms. But we have a new trailer for a game coming out in January on Switch 2. We also have an update to that strange video from Nintendo confirming it's Pikmin related. So that's pretty exciting. Before we dive in, though, I want to remind you we're giving away 3 copies of Age of Imprisonment and 5 copies of Kirby Air Riders. You can enter through the appropriate links down in the pinned comment or the description. Let's go ahead and dive in. We have this first video here put up right away. Nintendo of America. This is for Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, of course, coming out here in January. I'm really excited for this one. I got to go hands-on with it at PAX West. It played incredibly well. Yes, there's going to be sectors of the internet that poke fun at the fact that it is a locked 30 FPS and, yeah, it runs better on some other platforms. But let's just be honest here. This is a game that doesn't require that exact sort of precision that some games do require, some of that twitchiness. This isn't one of those kind of games if you've ever played it on other platforms. So it's perfectly reasonably fine at 30 FPS. But not only is it fine, and I got to remind everyone, the game's original first release was only at 30 FPS. So the game was targeting 30 FPS for its very original release. It visually looks really good. Obviously, they decided to push the visuals over pushing the frame rate. And in this particular case, I think that was the right decision for the game. I think this particular game doesn't necessarily need 60 FPS to make it a significantly better gameplay experience over the improved visuals they chose to go with instead. Now, in the most case, I would like to see both. I'd like to see great visuals and 60 FPS. And it's possible they probably could have obtained that if that would have been a target for them. But considering the game originally released in 30 FPS, I'm not really too surprised. So really just happy to see this game continue to get a push, continue to get marketing. Obviously, again, this is a game that's already out on some other platforms, but will be coming to Xbox and Nintendo Switch 2 next year. Nintendo Switch 2, we obviously know the release date is in January. So just really happy. If you guys want to see the rest of this trailer, we'll, of course, link it down below. I don't want to spend too much time on it because, of course, we have some bigger stories to get to. And that includes this. Now, whether or not Nintendo's going to get mad at me for showing this, I don't know. They only put this on Nintendo today. They didn't publish it, but we're going to show it anyways. I think we'll be all right. They updated this close to you visual. Basically, this is somebody who recorded it off the Nintendo Today app. So the quality is not going to be the greatest because Nintendo Today doesn't let you do native recordings. But the biggest part we want to see here is that, yes, indeed, the movement stuff is Pikmin. See, you already see the Pikmin leaf pop up. It's Pikmin. It's exactly what we thought it was. It's definitely Pikmin, moving things around, having a good time. So now that we know that this is a Pikmin-related thing, this obviously brings the speculation of, is this just about doing more Pikmin shorts? Again, Pikmin has a lot of short videos that have done hundreds of millions of views. So is it just that? And this thing for Nintendo Animations, is it something that's going to tie into a game? Is it something that's going to tie into something else? I don't know. What we do know, obviously, though, is the base Pikmin there, the red, blue, and yellow Pikmin are all there. Everyone's having fun. And it's interesting because I don't know if the baby can see the Pikmin. Obviously, we saw in the original, it didn't look like the baby could see it. If you know anything about Pikmin lore, humans can't see Pikmin. And I don't believe the baby sees the Pikmin. I think the baby's just chasing the Binky around and trying to grab it. I don't really think it's aware of the Pikmin, or it would be going after some of these other Pikmin that are just chilling instead of just going right after the Binky. So I think what you saw was basically the human perspective of what's happening in the first video, and now we're seeing the Pikmin's perspective of what's actually happening the humans can't see. That said, I don't know. Maybe the baby can see it. It's a little interesting. The lore around Pikmin is very fascinating to me, but I don't want to sit there and waste the whole thing. I'll provide a link to this down below. I don't know how long this video is going to stay up, of course, because it's not supposed to be public, but it's there for people that want to see it. And I want to make sure we get to our last story, because this is where we're going to spend a majority of our time over on Blue Sky, because we have the updated Circana data for August. And it's pretty good news for Nintendo overall. So August 2025 US video game market highlights. So NBA 2K26 mobile and Nintendo Switch 2 drove 11% spending growth in August compared to a year ago. So the biggest things we want to get to are obviously related to the Switch 2. So as we scroll down here, we're going to note some key Switch 2 metrics popping up here. Now, it says monthly hardware spending increased 32% when compared to a year ago to 312 million. Nintendo Switch 2 sales were able to offset double-digit percentage declines across each of PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series and Switch. Hardware. So we get some exact numbers. We don't always get this exact, so I'm happy that we are. 2.4 million units sold lifetime to date over its first 3 months in the market. Switch 2 is now 5% ahead of the previous record-setting pace of PlayStation 4, which sold 2.2 million units during its 3-month ending January of 2014. So it is still the fastest-selling system of all time. But it's interesting because it's only about 5% ahead. That said, 2.4 million. Last time they said over 2 million. So look, it sold just under about 400K units in August. So it had a pretty good hold from July. I gotta say, you're gonna find out later here that Donkey Kong Bonanza was the #1 seller, at least physically. So it makes sense that, Bonanza was probably still pushing some units in August. Very curious what September is going to say, since Nintendo didn't really have anything major coming out, although there was a Nintendo Direct, and perhaps that Nintendo Direct excited people for the holiday lineup and did invigorate some sales, but we don't really know, right? Because we don't have that data at the moment. Now it says hardware Nintendo Switch 2 unit sales are trending 70% ahead of time-aligned sales with the original Switch. That's pretty cool. Hardware year-to-date, video game hardware spending has grown 20% versus a year ago, reaching 2.9 billion. Unit sales are up 6.5% year-on-year, with the average selling price increase by 12.3% to 453 per unit sold. Obviously, that's the effect of Switch 2 being the #1 selling platform in the US for this year. And that being the case, it kind of goes to show that the average cost per system is going to go up as well. August video game content spending increased. But let's go ahead and look at some other numbers that we have in here. So Madden NFL 26 ranked second on the August bestsellers chart, and it debuted at number 10 year to date. But the title was also available as part of the EA Sports MVP bundle. What I actually care about here is that Madden NFL 26 was the second best-selling game of August across PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo platforms. It's notable it's only on Switch 2. It's not available on Switch, so that's pretty impressive for a third-party game, while placing first on the PC aggregated storefront chart. Other new releases on the month in the top 20 best-selling chart include Mafia: The Old Country at 3, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater at 4, Gears of War Reloaded at 6, Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar at 19. Story of Seasons actually performed very well on Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 as well. I think it's some mobile stuff. But let's get back to some of the major content things that we want to see here. So obviously we're going over different platforms. They obviously have the PlayStation platform here, seeing NBA 2K #1, Madden #2, Metal Gear Solid 3, Mafia: Low Country 4. You see much of the same here. EA Sports College Football was slightly ahead of Snake Eater, but pretty much the same sort of thing on Xbox. But then we get to Nintendo. And this is where you see Donkey Kong Bonanza, which again, that asterisk means no digital sales counted. So DK Bonanza is probably significantly ahead at #1. But then Madden 26 at #2. And then Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar at #3, followed by Super Mario Party Jamboree, and then Hogwarts Legacy. So 3 of the top 5 best-selling games in the month of August were third-party games. One of them a launch title, 2 of them new. So I think that that's pretty good. I think that's pretty good data there, showing that third-party games do have some interest, even though a majority of the chart is Nintendo. Some of this stuff could just be Switch 1 sales, of course, because they're combining Switch 1 and Switch 2 together. Next up here, you get to the PC side, where you see Madden and Mafia, then Grounded 2 holding there when it was #1 last month month of July, I should say, to #3 there, but then Metal Gear Solid, Snake Eater, NBA 2K26, Gears of War Reloaded, Elden Ring, Night Rain on there, and some Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto, of course. Now, accessory-wise, there was a 6% dip compared to a year ago, but Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller was the best-selling accessory in both units and dollars for August and 2025 year-to-date. So, basically, the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller is the best-selling accessory in the United States right now for the entire year. That's not too surprising, given it's a new platform launch, and that's when people are buying those extra controllers and stuff, are always during that year 1, year 2 period, where I expect the Switch 2 Pro Controller to basically be the best-selling accessory next year as well, unless Switch 2 is suddenly tanking out of nowhere and no one's buying it anymore. And then you can see the U.S. video game industry best-selling chart, digital data, from people that share it. And you can see, you know, eShop data is included for this stuff, not included for anything from Nintendo, however. So you can kind of take that for what you will, and you can see where they get all their data from. Pretty transparent stuff. So Matt Piscatella doing his usual job here, and he seems pretty positive on Nintendo Switch, even though it is readily available. And obviously, we know there were some supply constraints with PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, etc. And yeah, probably without supply constraints, they would have outsold what the Switch 2 did, but that doesn't diminish the Switch 2's success, nor that the Switch 2 is selling 77% launch a line better than the Switch. I think that's a more telling figure than anything else. And yes, I know we could talk about how, Switch was supply constrained and yada yada, but around the 3 to 4 month mark, it actually started to get quite easy to find Nintendo Switches. People are just not remembering that was like the June, July period. It was actually getting pretty easy to find Switches in the US at least, but probably still easier to get Switch 2s in comparison. I would venture to guess, because Nintendo was sort of taken aback at the time about the demand for Switch. So they were behind in manufacturing, whereas they're ahead in manufacturing this time. So I would argue, at least here in the US, that, that's obviously not a problem for the Switch 2, and has probably been a more significant problem for all prior platforms. So despite that, I still think it's pretty good that it is sold almost even with July, obviously a little bit less, but considering Nintendo had exactly 0 major new games in August besides Dragon Drive and some DLC, September numbers will probably be a little bit lower. I suspect maybe around 300K, just because, they had literally no releases in September. That being said, I actually think this thing's probably sold 9 million plus worldwide as of the end of September. We'll know that the first week of November. I am just going to sit back and say, I think this stuff is mostly positive data. I think there's obviously ways you can grab any sort of numbers and spin them in any way you want and make a negative out of it. But look, there are a few undeniable facts. One, it is still the fastest selling of all time system all time in the US. We could talk about all the caveats that led to that being a thing, but it's still a thing. It's still selling 77%, quicker. Launch aligned over the original Nintendo Switch, which had a much better lineup for most people. And I would argue that Switch 2 is about to have a really big holiday season. Yeah, we could talk about other reasons that maybe they won't have a big holiday season, but guys, they have Legends ZA bundled this month. I just want to let that sink in. Like, I know it's a cross-platform game, but if you don't think the Legends ZA bundle is going to be a huge mover, especially in the US, especially on Black Friday and stuff, then I think you're massively underselling the appeal of Pokemon just because of some reactions to that lawsuit against Palworld. I'm going to tell you right now, a majority of people don't actually care about that. And then, obviously, they have other big games coming as well. I don't know how much Age of Imprisonment's going to move. Hopefully decent amounts. Kirby Air Riders, we don't know. Metroid Prime 4, I would love for that to become a system seller out of nowhere. But really, I think their holiday mostly hinges on the success and the reception of Pokemon Legends EA, which I think is going to be received fairly well, regardless of people being knocking the visuals and all that. The gameplay I got to play at PAX West was really good, and I had a feeling that gameplay is going to shine through in the reviews, and it's going to be surprisingly a hit this holiday for those people that were actually doubting it, more so than just, it sold 10 million plus. Of course it did. It's Pokemon. But I think it's going to be a big mover for Switch 2. So anyways, guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think about all this sales data and all this stuff down in the comments below. We're obviously going to have a podcast tonight. The Nintendo by Podcast is back. We got a big show for you guys. We got Zoo coming on from Flipping the Switch. We have Andre from Game Explain coming on. Obviously, our normal crew. And we got to talk about all the sales data stuff. We got to talk about this new little short video Nintendo put out there and more. There's just a lot we need to get into because every week there's always new stuff happening in the world of Nintendo. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you on the podcast tonight.